أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. First, I would like to thank everybody for coming out this evening. The topic for tonight in this Tazkiyatun session is getting the most out of fasting. Getting the most out of fasting. And obviously it's a relevant topic because Ramadan is about to come to an end. And I should preface what I'm going to say that we all know that this is the month in which the Quran began, the revelation of the Quran began to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That it started in the month of Ramadan. And so we know that Allah says to fast in this month, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ, to fast in this month. And Allah also tells us the reason or the purpose behind fasting. And that fasting is for us to increase in our taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, just to increase in our taqwa, or to develop in our taqwa. So in a sense, fasting is like going to school. For a period of time, we sit in class and we listen to the teacher explain the lesson, and the teacher assigns us the assignments, and we do the assignments. We do the homework, and we absorb the information, and we use the information. And we learn some information, then we benefit from that information. Most of us already know the basic rules of fasting already. I'm sure we all know the rules of fasting. I don't need to go into it. No food, no drink, no physical relations from Fajr till Maghrib. And undoubtedly, we also know the various hadith about fasting, such as the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he speaks about avoiding conflict and avoiding backbiting while fasting. But our goal is to get the most of our fasting, to derive as much benefit as possible from this act of fasting that we do. And so there are a couple of things that I would like to highlight tonight, inshallah. The first thing is that since we're entering into the last section of Ramadan, the last 10 days of Ramadan, not 10 weeks, the last 10 days of Ramadan, because today is the 17th of Ramadan. The Prophet is reported to have said, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, the Prophet is reported to have said that the benefit of this section, or this part of the month of Ramadan, he's reported to have said that the benefit is emancipation from hellfire. That the last 10 days of Ramadan has in it emancipation from hellfire. And we can understand this hadith to mean simply that the last 10 days of Ramadan, we are more determined, more inspired, since it's almost over, to increase in our devotions and to really grow as believers. So, in a sense, we are constructing our own path to freedom. And we are invigorated to be blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do and be about the right thing. So this is the first thing. The second thing that I would like to mention is that, as we know from the Sunnah and also from the Quran, we are taught to seek out what is called Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr. And this is the Laylatul Qadr, it means the night of measure or the night of decree. And this expression is usually translated as as the night of power. Usually you see the translation, they usually describe Laylatul Qadr or translate Laylatul Qadr as meaning the night of power. And the Quran says about this particular period that this period is more useful or more beneficial than 1,000 months. Laylatul Qadri khayru min alfi shahr. That it is more useful or more beneficial than 1,000 months, which is basically 83 years. And so we're taught to seek out Laylatul Qadr. by more indulgence in prayer, more indulgence in dhikr, more indulgence in reading the Quran, introspection, and things like that. And we're taught to do so by retreating to the quiet of the masjid. So you see how quiet the masjid is? Now we're taught to seek out Laylatul Qadr. One of the methods is by retreating to the quiet of the mosque. Even sleeping in the mosques. In this regard, sleeping becomes an act of worship of God. Anyways, about Laylatul Qadr, we should try to understand that Laylatul Qadr should not be understood like a lottery. You know, you go to the lottery. I'm not telling you to play lottery, by the way. But you know, Laylatul Qadr should not be understood like the lottery. You know, you go to the lottery and you take a chance. You know, you pay money to get a lottery ticket, hoping to win. Hoping to win the whatever the prize is, whatever the money is. The truth of the matter is that Laylatul Qadr can be at any time for the benefit of anyone seeking it out. And even if we were to look at it from another perspective, because we may hear say Laylatul Qadr is sought out in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, that the emphasis is looking for it at the odd nights of Ramadan. But even if you look at it from another point of view, like right now is evening time here. And in another place in the world is the daytime. Right now is about perhaps 8 a.m. in China and the Asian countries, and here obviously is evening. So should believers or would believers in another part of the world be deprived because of the location? So think about that for a minute. And the point I'm trying to establish with regards to Laylatul Qadr is that Laylatul Qadr can come at any time if the believer is ready for it. So the spiritual aspect of Laylatul Qadr, the spiritual aspect of this is described in the Quran. And perhaps when we pray Maghrib, perhaps we recite the surah. The spiritual aspect or the spiritual benefit of Laylatul Qadr is described as angelic forces coming forth. تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر. As angelic forces coming forth in a consistent way or a consistent fashion, bringing with them the inspiring spirit, doing whatever Allah has ordered them or has commanded them to do. So certainly an encounter with heavenly inspiration or an encounter with angels, certainly that's a wonderful thing. That's a wonderful thing. It is a unique experience. And so this is a potential result. It's just as prayer. We pray 5 times a day. Every Muslim, the sinner or the saint, is obligated to pray 5 times a day. The ignorant and the educated, all are obligated to pray 5 times a day. And a person can have spiritual experiences as a result of the prayer. But it might be something that either another person cannot understand, or you cannot really describe it to another person. Or even if you try to describe it, perhaps that other person will not be able to understand it, or may think that you've lost your mind, or whatever. So the experience, even that experience, is of a limited nature. So there is another aspect to this issue, or to this idea, or to this teaching about Laylatul Qadr. And this is the thing I really would like to emphasize. Laylatul Qadr is seen as a climax of Ramadan. And we prepare for it, and we prepare for it, and we prepare for it, and we prepare for it. And really, it's the preparing, that's what it's all about. So, if we prepare for it, for example, by giving up smoking, because in Ramadan, whether you believe that smoking is lawful or not, everybody knows to give up smoking while fasting, right? Everybody knows to give up smoking while fasting. So if you can give up smoking while fasting, you can be inspired to give up smoking in its totality. Whether it's halal or not is not the point. If you can give up smoking while fasting, you can become inspired to give it up in its totality. And that is a decision that can change your life. The decision to give up smoking is a decision that changes your life. So in other words, the results of the decisions or the actions or the mental development are summarized by that sentence in the Quran wherein it says that Laylatul Qadr is more useful or more beneficial than 1,000 months. Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alfi shahr. And what is 1,000 months? This is 83 years, roughly 83 years, which is a little bit more than the average modern lifespan. A little bit more than the average lifespan. So deciding to give up smoking, or deciding to give up drinking, deciding to be closer to your family, deciding to have halal relationships as opposed to haram relationships, being determined to be guided by the divine guidelines, and not really what other people say or what other people think or what society thinks. Those are the things that really show us the result of Laylatul Qadr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu, la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawt an-nabi. Allah says, O believers, do not elevate your voices above the voice of the Prophet. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Deciding to be a little more confident, a little more bold, abandoning a fear, abandoning a thinking patterns and mindsets, as we said on Friday, that have no support from a healthy understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah. Deciding to be a little more confident, bold, courageous, abandoning a fear, abandoning of thinking patterns and mindsets that we recognize as doing more harm to us than good. Isn't that powerful if you think about it like that? If you think about it like that, isn't that a powerful thing? To have this fasting, this searching, this method that we do, this searching method, and to have this time of fasting as a pillar of our faith, just as the pillars in this room. That is a great blessing. No other religious community has Ramadan. Other communities have fasting, but only the Muslims fast in Ramadan. Only the Muslims fast in Ramadan. So, the potential for a social miracle, is found in Ramadan. And a miracle or a set of miracles that can prove to be greater in power and greater in reach than any reported miracle in history. Greater in power and greater in reach than any reported miracle in history. And this is the truth. I mean, think about it like this. People debate miracles. Did Jesus, alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, did he turn the water into wine? What are the other things that they say that he did in the Bible? Walk on the water. Rise the dead, loaves of bread and the fish. Yes, all.
Turn the bird into clay.
Yes.
Turn the clay into a blood bird.
Yes. Yes. So people debate about. Yes. So people debate about these things. The miracles that appear in the Quran, or the miracles that appear in the Bible, or the miracles that appear in the Sirah literature, the Hadith literature. And really, these are things that can be debated, because in the end of the day, none of us were there to say, yes, I saw that miracle and I saw that happen, and I had no other explanation.
When he was young, his father Joseph was a carpenter, and he cut the wood, and then they say that he stretched it out more.
Well, none of us can say that we saw these events take place, and people can debate whether these events literally happen or not happen. But however, when someone takes a decision to become closer to Allah, when someone takes a decision to embrace that which is healthy and discard that which is repugnant and distasteful and harmful, that in the end, that is the miracle that's lasting. This is the point I'm trying to establish. The Prophet ﷺ is said to have produced milk from his fingers, right? In the Hadith literature. It said that the Prophet ﷺ split the moon. there are a few other miracles that are associated with the Prophet in our history, but people dispute those miracles. Even among Muslim scholars or Muslim writers, they just, they have different interpretations about all these things that are given in the text. But none can dispute the social miracle of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the social miracle of Muslims, the miracle in the sense that the Muslims were inspired to give up drinking, and they gave up drinking in its entirety in the time of the Prophet. That Muslims were inspired to give up tribalism, and they gave it up totally in the time of the Prophet. That they were inspired to be people who cared about those less in situations that they were not in. This is the miracles these are the miracles that are lasting. These are the real miracles. These are the real miracles. And so these miracles influence society. These miracles influence children. These miracles benefit families. And we can even argue that these are miracles that even benefit economy and benefit government. Praise belongs to Allah. Praise belongs to Allah for guiding us to Islam. For if it was not for His guidance, we would not have received guidance at all. There are some quotes that I would like to share tonight from Imam Al-Ghazali, which we've talked about here in the past. He's one of the greatest minds in the Muslim history. And his writings and his compilations of writings are must-reads. They're must-reads, meaning that they need to be studied and they need to be looked at repeatedly by those who have deep spiritual interests. And Imam Al-Ghazali is not speaking just from an academic point of view. He is somebody who, if you look at his life, he practiced what he preached. And he spent many years basically journeying, seeking out the guidance of Allah. He says, this is from his book, Ihya Ulum ad-Din, The Revival of Religious Sciences. He says, once there was a rich man who sought out advice from Bashar Hafi, from a person, from like a sheikh. A rich man he sought out advice from somewhat of a religious man, because this rich man, he wanted to go for Hajj. He went for Hajj already, but he wanted to do an extra Hajj again. And think about this, because we have people who go for Hajj 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 times in their life, maybe more than that. So the sheikh, he asks the rich man, why do you want to go to Hajj again? Why do you want to go to Hajj again? And the man says, I want to go to Hajj to please Allah. I want to go to Hajj again to be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the sheikh tells the man, you can earn greater reward from Allah. Even in going for Hajj again. He says you can earn greater reward from Allah by paying the debts of 10 people in debt. By removing the wants of those in want, meaning, people who are in severe poverty. By giving in charity to poor Muslims who have big families. Or distributing the money, meaning the money that you're going to spend for the Hajj, distributing that money to 10 orphans. Isn't that beautiful? So the argument or the idea or the teaching that we're attempting to convey is rooted deeply in the Quran. Is rooted deeply in the Quran. Is rooted deeply within the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and within the tradition of the early Muslims. So what we're saying is not innovation, it's not modernism, it's not bid'ah, it's not tashdeed or anything like that. It is deeply rooted within the Quran and the Sunnah. The great miracle or the great miracles are those which leave a social impact, which change the lives of others as well as ourselves in a nice way or in a positive way. Ghazali also says, rahmatullahi alayhi, he also says, self-knowledge is the key to the knowledge of Allah. Self-knowledge, think about that. Self-knowledge is the key to the knowledge of Allah. Showing that in order to be a truly spiritual person, in order to be a person who is really arif, or someone who really is, in an authentic connection to the divine, that person has to know who he himself is. That person has to know who he himself is. Meaning that person, he or she must be realistic. Meaning that person, or I should say us, we should know our strengths and our weaknesses. We should know our flaws and our personality quirks, the things that we need to work on. Once we have that, once we understand that, only then can we begin to know about Allah. Only then can we begin to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it doesn't matter how many books that we read or how many, shuyukh that we have studied under or how many ijazas and all these things. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported to have said, and this is in Sahih Bukhari, that a Muslim is a mirror for his brother. It's a very famous hadith. A Muslim is a mirror for his brother. Meaning that it is often the case that our brother can see something that we can't see about ourselves. And it could be bad, good, or it can be bad. And look at the mirror. If you have some mustard on your shirt, you don't know until perhaps you get in front of a mirror and you see it on your shirt, or your hair isn't combed right, and want to make yourself look nice and proper, like Brother Yusuf over here. So it becomes important to be cognizant. It also, so the hadith, connect the hadith to the statement earlier. It becomes important to be cognizant of how others see us. Other people's observations may be wrong. That's true. It could be wrong. It could be a misreading, but there might be some truth in it. So at the very least, we become aware of, why is that person saying that? Is there validity to what that person is saying? And that in turn helps us in our turning towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Ghazali, rahimahullah, also speaks in great detail about what he calls internal fasting. He calls internal fasting. And one of the things that he says, in describing internal fasting includes this: restraining the eyes from looking at things that distract one from Allah. And he also says to restrain the ear, like he describes the fasting of the ear, to restrain the ear from listening to that which is not proper to hear, and compare that to all the things that we listen to, the television shows and the music and all manners, just walking down the street, hearing what people are playing on the radio, all manners of things. Inshallah, this Ramadan will be that time or that moment in our lives in which we decide firmly, or we become more committed, I should say, to have a healthy Islam. A healthy Islam. To abandon mindsets that we see very often in our age, in the modern age. Where the mindsets of narcissism, the mindsets of jealousy, the mindsets of fears, the mindset of self-delusions. Inshallah, we can grow to be in this Ramadan. We can grow to become better human beings with true and with authentic connections to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah ta'ala. Are there any thoughts or comments?
I was going to say also, people are praising themselves.
People aren't praising him?
No, I said people put self-containment on themselves. So it's like they strive for better.
Do you mean by that like they constrain them they put themselves in like a like they stop themselves intentionally?
Yeah, like
or they
some people intentionally, some people not intentionally, but it's basically like this, like I said, mind in shackles basically. And that it can stop you from doing just a lot of stuff. And then on a similar note, the Quran basically speaks of that when there's a disease in your heart, or the black dots, or what, it's hard for you to do anything with, and that has anything to do with Allah. You have that's only hard because it's just hard, You can't do it. It's always you always find something.
This is one of the benefits of being a Muslim, because admittedly, Muslims and non-Muslims.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt. We did not hear what he said, so I don't know what you responded to. None of us did.
Okay, do you want to repeat what you said?
No, do what you want to say.
Uh-huh.
Forget what you want to say.
You want me to repeat it?
No, don't you forget what you want to say.
No, go let him repeat what he said. Then else.
What I said is that. What did I say?
You're talking about self-containment.
You know.
Okay. All right. What Brother Yusuf was talking about was basically what he called self-containment. That like maybe sometimes we put ourselves in straitjackets. Like I can't do it. And I think what he's trying to say, what he's saying is that it's not an outside force that's stopping him.
Life, like doing the right thing, period. Doing the right thing, that's following the straight path. And so, hey, I'll say this. When I first got married to my wife, I can't work, this hard job. I can't do it. But the more we got married, and I realized that I'm being basically put myself in containment, I stopped doing that because it was hurting my family. And when I'm hurting my family, I'm not practicing proper Islam. So that was one of my self-containments. I'm still going through it just a little bit today, but
Makes sense. What I was gonna say is that because you started talking about the issues of the heart.
Oh yeah, the black dots, the stains on our hearts. That, basically, I've experienced it before, and I see it in other people. Like you can just mention Allah or anything that has something to do with going to the straight path, and they'll, I've seen it many times. People just be like, let's talk about something else. Or they get jealous, or they get envious, or when you mention Allah, they put themselves in it, they self-contain themselves. And that's.
I think the thing about Islam is that it's universal and everybody relates to it. So there's not any one person, I don't think, that can say that anything different than what you have. And I think one really, really good thing about what he said during Jummah is that everybody relates to that. And I mean, I did look around the room and I did see like a lot of people they really, everybody was experiencing that or had experienced that or whatever. So I mean, you're not by yourself in that. Everybody, that's a universal thing. And I think that's what makes Islam doable for everybody. Is that it's relatable to everyone. We all experience this thing. And it's not like any kind of race. It's not any kind of competition. It's just the things that all of us go through, and we all have that pace that we have to go at to get to where we're going. But I mean, if something comes to your attention because you have doubted yourself about it, and it comes to you, Allah gave you emotions for a reason, and He gave you a heart, to feel with and to guide you and things like that. That He speaks to you through. And so when you feel like something that you're doing is not right, or that you don't feel like you're living right, and things like that, I mean, those are part of worship to Allah, because those are the things that if you pay attention to those things, and that's an act of worship to you. Yeah, it's an act of worship that kind of pulls you back to the thinking that you're supposed to be having in the first place. So I think those are things that it's universal to everybody. It goes all across the board for everybody.
Actually, I was gonna say almost the same thing. That's one of the blessings of being Muslim, because I mean, frankly, all of us in this world, especially in today's world, we have to deal with things, and our hearts get dirty just as our bodies get dirty or our clothes get dirty, and this is the pillars of Islam itself. I mean, even just look at Salah. Let's look at that for just 1 second. The Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, says that Salah, if it's done, regularly, he said he compares this to the person who bathes 5 times a day, right? That he's not going to have a lot of dirt on him. And similarly, we have what we're doing today. We have fasting in Ramadan. This is a pillar of Islam. And just if I focus just on these two things, which does not exist in the same form in other faith traditions. In other words, Muslims have it made. Really, Muslims have it made. And that's not being arrogant or being anti any other faith, but Muslims have it made in the sense that we have this faith that is constantly seeking to clean us up. If we are praying and we have bad habits, or if we're praying, or if we're fasting and we have bad habits, or we have some, as you said, some things within our psyche which is holding us back, then we come in a stronger position to deal with those things, to confront those things, and to conquer those things, overwhelm those things. And so this is not rhetoric. It's something which is actually established as a pillar of faith, or as pillars of faith. Without which, if those pillars are gone, then the whole building of Islam, collapses. So this is something that's a very wonderful thing that's having Islam. Sir.
I would like to say this here. Everything we do, like the dark spots in our heart. Everything we make a sin, do something bad, there's a dark spot on your heart. And you can wash it away with repentance, So, what I'm trying to say is that I'm saying there's some Muslims who don't never pray. They're not supposed to pray. Well, that has established a disease in their heart to let that go. And unless they don't know the value of it. That's a disease in the heart. The last thing the Prophet Muhammad said, one of the things he said before he passed, that keep up the prayer.
Yes.
The main thing is that, and there's a lot to prayer that we don't know.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And we see the value, we'll run to it,
Yes. Yes. Let me share another saying of the Prophet too. He says, have taqwa of Allah. Have taqwa of Allah wherever you are. And he says to follow up a bad deed with a good deed. And the Quran itself gives a lot of examples about how people who have wronged themselves, who have some kind of spiritual harm, or they have done something which is Islamically incorrect, that to fix that, we do more than the religious thing, the act of repentance. To fix it, we have to do some good in a wider society, to do good for other people. So, in other words, Islam has a very beautiful formula for salvation. That we all have a chance to attain it, and what the Salah does, it makes us always conscious of that thing, even if we have mistakes or we have sins. It makes us conscious of that. Yes, sir.
This is a fragment of a thought, or a brainstorm.
Please.
So it's like my thought was, what I was thinking in my head. A lot of people are like children because they don't see the benefits and doing the right thing. Because when you, as I see now, when you do the right thing, it begots good. And then when things are, you do have trials, they're not as difficult. And so my thought was, one of the thoughts was like, people are like children. A child would be like, hey, I want to play video game, I want to watch TV, I want Kool-Aid, now I'm bored. And so I was wondering how, as Muslims, can we have people see? Because once they, people, they see some benefits. That's why right now, the Joe is really good. He makes, he drives that Mercedes Benz, and everybody like, well, I got to do whatever he's doing since he got that, that Mercedes Benz. But, how do you take that? And as Muslims, we show people that when you do the right thing, it begots good. And if there's some, trial or tribulation that comes to you, it won't even, it won't even be difficult. And if it is difficult, you're able to, you're able to take it. So that's my brain sort of what's going on. It's how do you show people the benefits? Because everybody wants to work. That's all people, really in this day and age, they want benefits. And it's like Islam has those benefits. It's like when you first become a Muslim, they constantly tell you do this, and do this. But you like a child, you don't see it. You could be praying and be like, I'm just praying. You could be, doing all the 5 pillars, but not mature. Your heart's not mature yet, so you're still thinking like a child, and you don't see the benefits. And because I know when you see those, I know personally, I see those benefits, and I'm just happy. I'm like, man, this is be at home with my wife and we do something good, and she's happy, I'm happy, and then we leave, and then something positive happens, and I just be like, I was like, man, this is, where have this been all my life? Man, I wish I could just go back in the past and put myself on this, because I've just missed out on my, it's just, I'll just be like, man, and it's like, the other benefit of it now is like, if I do something wrong, my heart tells me right then and there, like, hey, that's wrong. And then it's like, man, I gotta get back, I can't do that, because, if I start doing this, then I already know. So it's like, man, how do we get people to see that and want to get, want that,
Well, you said 2 things that I'm going to try to address, and they're both important, and I hope I catch it all. Let me give this example. Now, let's say a person does, as you said, he's praying 5 times a day, right? And he's fasting in Ramadan, and he goes for Hajj, and he believes in La ilaha illallah, and believes in Muhammad Rasulullah. And he's a practicing Muslim, but the reason I've restricted the example to prayer. A person might pray 5 times a day, right? But maybe he's rushing. Maybe he has to go back to work. Maybe he has to go back to class. And so he's just in this habit of praying, like most of us, especially those of us who have from Muslim families and Muslim our whole life. Prayer, is just, routine. It's just, just something you do. You're not conscious of it, right? But there are moments. Why do you pray? The Quran, Salah is our connection to Allah, right? And sometimes we feel that connection stronger than in other times. And so the act of praying, and I'm using this as an example to address the overall, the act of praying can lead to an experience that is unique to yourself. So you just keep praying. You just keep doing it. You just keep doing it. Because, in life, we start off as young children, not always with a mohawk, but, we start off as children, and, we go into our teenage years, we go into adult, we go through these various stages of our development. And so even if we're praying all the time, we're gonna feel it differently. So the first thing is to just keep at it. To keep at it. Especially with prayer. The other thing you asked, how can we influence people or see people to see the realities? And I think that the best answer to that is looking at the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and looking at the way Muslims developed after that. For the most part, you know how you see Jehovah's Witnesses, they go and they give you the Watchtower, and they give you these magazines, and teaching you about their faith. In these other denominations, they give you literature and have preachers that teach you about their faith. For the most part, this didn't happen too much in Muslim history. It happened, but not that much. Rather, Islam spread really through the honest life that Muslims lived. You can find this phenomenon in Eastern Europe, in some of the African countries, and especially so in the Southeast Asian Islamic countries, that people came there to make money. Muslims came from one area of the world to another area of the world to make money. And people were so impressed with the ethics of the Muslims, with the behavior of the Muslims, that they say, I want to follow this deen. No Muslim army ever came and made jihad against these countries. But, the people were just impressed with the ethic. I want to be like these people. So, the best preaching is the life itself, the Islamic life itself. Even without saying any words. Just the Islamic life. Without wearing a cap. Without, the best preaching is the living. The best preaching is the living example. And this is how Prophet Muhammad was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who should I go? Yes, sir.
Yes, like you were just speaking about a head cover. Isn't that the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? For the head cover to distinguish us from other people in the community. Wasn't that an admonition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
Well, these ideas are somewhat disputed. The head covering acts mainly as I guess you can call it an identifier. Generally speaking, the head covering for men is not seen as a religious obligation. What is seen as a religious obligation is to dress in a way that the awra is covered. To dress in a way that is dignified, and to dress in a way that is not, revealing and things like that. Indeed, when we go for Hajj to the Kaaba, the most sacred site of Islam, among the rituals is that we, in the holiest of places, we have to have no head covering for the men. There's no kufi, there's no turban, there's no any head covering. So I hope that answers that particular query, and maybe later on, if you want, we can go into more detail. Sir.
I was to add, if I could add
Please.
to what you said specifically with regards to the prayer. I found that teaching people educating people on every aspect of the prayer, a lot of times help them kind of be able to engage it. So that the salah developed over time. The prayer, the way we pray it now, was not the way it was prayed when it was first prescribed to the Prophet ﷺ. And over time, you had certain things happening, like certain Sahabi would be in prayer, they would say something, and the Prophet ﷺ would acknowledge it, and it would become a part of the prayer. And then somebody else would say something, and he would acknowledge it, and so on and so forth. And teaching them this, and also encouraging people to, at the very least, understand all of what we're saying in the prayer, like Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd, Allahu Akbar, and what all of these things entail, and the purposes, all of the various purposes behind the prayer, and kind of just putting things in perspective, because a lot of people don't realize, and even I didn't realize for a long time, that it's like a serious discipline to have, to stop yourself 5 times a day, no matter
Yes.
what it is that you're doing, and put
Yes.
Allah first before everything. No matter what you're doing, you have that time a day, those few minutes
Yes.
that you're not putting anything else before Allah. And it's like something like, you know, to show people, like let people realize how much, you know, you know, I don't know, it's a sacrifice, if you will, or it's a very, you know, serious deed that it is that they're doing. And lastly, viewing it in the way that Ali ibn Abi Talib has said, you know, how he said the Quran, if you want to speak to Allah, then you make the prayer,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
if you want Allah to speak to you, then you read the Quran, because that's Allah's speech to mankind.
Yes.
So let people realize that, you know, that's your dialogue with Allah. Reading Quran and making salah is the back and forth between you and Allah.
Yeah.
And just kind of like putting that in perspective for people, so they can actually see it for what it is and start using it for its actual purpose, and not seeing it as merely a ritual. That's for the salah. The other part, I think, definitely.
Yeah, salah cannot be overemphasized. Salah cannot be overemphasized. Like, you know, we can alter anything else. You know, you can you know, not everyone is obligated for Hajj. If you don't, not everyone is obligated to go for Hajj if he or she doesn't have the financial ability to go. If they don't have the physical strength to go, he's not obligated. Not everyone is obligated to pay zakat. There are some people who are obligated to receive zakat, not to pay zakat. Hint, hint, right? But with salah, it's a different story. With salah, it's a different story. Salah is our tie, is our connection to Allah. And there's a hadith, it's muttafaqun alayh hadith, meaning it's in Bukhari and Muslim. And this hadith has it that a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He did some kind of sin that required punishment. So, you know, the Prophet was just like, you know, trying to put him off, like, you know, like, ignore him basically. And the man kept at it. And so then the hadith says the time for prayer came. And so it says that the man made salah ma'a Rasulillah. He made salah with the Prophet. And then afterwards he came to the Prophet, look, you know, I did this sin and I need to be punished. And so the Prophet says, did you pray with us? Yes, I prayed with you. And so then the Prophet said, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ غَفَرَ لَكَ ذَنْبَكَ وَحَدَّكَ, that Allah is forgiven your sin, even the sin that requires punishment. You know? So again, even if you're not always conscious of it, even if you don't know the meaning of all the words of it, then nonetheless that salah is powerful. Indeed, if most of us don't know the Quran in Arabic, we should always, but it's just for the sake of argument, say we don't know the words of the Quran, don't understand the words of the Quran. It's still powerful, isn't it? When you hear Abdul Basit on YouTube or something, or hear a good Qari on YouTube, or Qari Ashir here, you know, it's still powerful. In fact, he'll lead the prayer and give an example about it. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that you made a reference to children, and in all the dialogue, I kind of lost a little bit of what it was that everybody was saying, but I do know that when people make a reference to how children are, it's always negative with the positive, because it can go either way depending on what we're talking about. But in a way, to have what children have is a good thing. Because at that age, being a child, those years, is when we're most receptive to learn. That's when our minds are really sponge-like and they really absorb a lot of stuff even without our expecting it or knowing it or whatever it is. And a lot of times as adults, we learn something and then we feel like once we learn it, like when people learn how to say prayer, it's like, oh, we need to know about it. You know what I mean? Then we kind of block ourselves from being able to absorb more. But we have to remember to keep that childlikeness as far as learning something goes, because when you want to teach somebody involved in that as you can, because then that's what is eventually going to draw in, it's going to draw people in, and I think that Islam is illegal, and people do learn from Islam by our actions more than our words, even though they get both. But a lot of times, as far as prayer is concerned, when we learn how to pray, we learn what to say, we learn frustrations, and the times that we're supposed to say them, sometimes we just kind of block any more learning about it. And we just kind of feel like we know what we need to know. And it's not necessarily true. So when you keep that childlikeness about you, and you feel like, you can be receptive to, feeling more and knowing more, and then, following the examples of others that, have learned more and things like that, then that's a good thing, and I think you'll get more from this a lot by being like that. By having, being like a child in that respect. That was all I was saying.
He made a very, very strong point. Yeah, that was, it's not all children. I have been corrected.
I didn't remember what you said. I just know that you made a reference to it. A lot of times when people make references to children, there's usually something negative and having something to do with immaturity. But really, the children, they're not immature. And us being like children doesn't make us immature.
There's a perhaps I shouldn't quote this, but there's a statement attributed to Isa alayhi salam, or Jesus, in the Bible, and it has Jesus say, "You will not have faith until you become like these little children." And the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam says, "Kullu mawludan yuladun ala al-fitra," that every child is born upon this natural disposition, this disposition that is inclined towards God, that is inclined towards mercy and generosity and loving everyone and everything. And even if it's not your own children, if a child waves to you or something, it makes your day. It makes my day. It's not my. It just makes my day. So there is something to be said about that quality that children are born with. And the Prophet says, when in the hadith I just described, the Prophet is saying this child is born as a submitter to God, as a Muslim. But over time, he or she becomes something else because this is what society expects. Any other comments or thoughts? Sir? No, nothing?
No, I'm just saying that's why society needs to get itself together. Because they corrupt our children. In a similar fashion, I was doing other studies. And the Joe, or the Shaitan's plan, or mostly Alistair Crowley, or whatever his name was, his plan when he decided that he was going to be a prophet for Shaitan. And if you read the book, that's exactly what he was doing. His plan was to attack the youth, because the youth, they'll grow up, and then they'll become adults, but they're already doing the wrong thing. And then they're going to teach their children to do the wrong thing. And then their children are now the second generation of doing the wrong thing, and then the third generation doing the wrong thing, until when in the future, now we have human beings in the streets as though they're animals, no clothes, acting as donkeys, apes. And this is the thing, the reason why I say this is because this is Islamic, this is Islamic. If you study Islam, this is literally what's, I don't want to see this, I don't want to. But, you see it now, people, they go to their parties and they act like animals. They're naked, they're drinking, they're just being total animals. And the thing is, it's to attack the children. So, and then the second one is women after that. After the children, you get the women next, because they make children. But it's it's so important to like I said, guide a child right, because they become like the new society, and if you can like I said, corrupt a child and get him to raise kids and corrupt, then like I said, that was actually that was the plan. It was stated. It's a quote in the book, and they have books. This guy has a book, and it was a quote like, "I'm gonna get the youth, get the young men of the world to accept this shaitan and Dajjal lifestyle." So like I said, it's scary.
All the more reason why Muslims have to stick together. All the more reasons why you cannot be a Muslim by yourself, like a fish out of water. You cannot survive for very long. We have to be together. Yes, sir.
What was the guy's name?
Who?
The guy talking about
Alistair Crowley. And then the second guy is I don't know. But the whole thing is that, I mean, what I learned is that the Dajjal has a form, and he works through many people, just like Shaitan influences many people. But this guy literally did have a very big impact on these revolutions, these feminine revolution, the sexual revolution, these peace, whatever you call it, when that war in the 60s and stuff like that, drug revolution. He had his hand in that. Part of the Dajjal had his hand in that, and that's basically where all these revolutions come, where everybody thinking like, oh, we're going to experience new things, but really they weren't. And so I don't know.
Let me share this thought. In Arabic, we have Dajjal, you have Masih Dajjal. Dajjal means a deceiver. Like anyone, sometimes in the Arab world they call the rulers Dajjal. Because they call the rulers as Dajjal. And Masih Dajjal is the Dajjal who pretends to be messianic in nature. And so even though I just stick to Dajjal instead of Masih Dajjal, the Prophet has said, peace be upon him, he mentions the importance of Surah Al-Kahf, Surah number 18. And it's not that it...
To read it every Friday before.
Yes, but also that it provides as protection from Dajjal. And it's not like a magic formula that you put a T-shirt and you have the whole surah on a T-shirt, and that it's going to protect you like Superman or something like that. No, but what it is that if you look at the whole of the surah, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but if you go into the whole of the surah, if you learn the contents of the surah, the teachings of the surah, I should say, that surah will alert you to what is real and what is not. So, again, the Prophet emphasizes using that surah as a particular example. And that's also a surah that deserves our attention, our regular attention. Any other?
I just like how we talk about one thing and it connects to the other thing. So we talk about children, we talk about society, and it connects. And then, society, with all this, earlier you said something about like the music, fasting of the ears, of the eyes. But it connects to society, and it connects to the youth, and it connects to the hypocrites and the deceivers. And like I said, like you said, Islam has it on the silver platter. We have it all laid out for us. All we have to do is seek it. It's right there. We don't have to, you really don't have to do too much like legwork. Go to the desert and go dig and find ancient scrolls to get this knowledge. It's already there. And so, it's just like I said, it's beautiful. And like I said, that's one of the benefits. Once you know something is real, you can go fight. I love it.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to share
Please.
On what you said in regards to benefits. I was in an environment incarcerated. And one of the things that I've noticed from the non-Muslims that will see the Muslims praying every day, a lot of things, it can be just simple as doing wudu because of the purification of it. And they say, why you do that all the time? Well, yeah. And then they get to think, well, when I pray, do I do that? Am I clean? So sometimes it's to see the benefits is just the character
Yes.
of the Muslim and the
Yes.
character living that life as
Yes.
a Muslim.
Yes.
And you can best believe if you are steadily doing it, people are watching you.
Yes.
You know, if you just take, for example, they say, hey, you were out here and you're not gang banging, you're not shooting up anything, that's a benefit. You know, because you have faith and, you know, people start seeing that repetitiously. When you start doing something repetitiously, believe me, people are watching you. You may not think they are, but they are.
Yes.
Especially if you're steadily doing it.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Would that be considered obligation by example?
Yes. And this is actually sunnah. Actually, the Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, Prophet's wife, she says that the character of the Prophet kana khuluquhu Quran, that the character of the Prophet was the Quran. And the Quran itself says that Allah made the Prophet that way. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Allah says that He made the Prophet that way to live, to be that guide, not so much by words, but by the way he lived. You know, by his character, by his actions. That was his da'wah. That was the strongest form of da'wah. And the Prophet was the best person, the best da'i, the best person to give da'wah.
Did you say Aisha?
Yes. Aisha says, you know, after the Prophet died, she was asked, this is in the hadith literature, she was asked, what was the Prophet like? What was his character like? And so her response was, his character was the Quran. And other versions of this says that he was the Quran walking. There's another version of it. He was the Quran walking and talking. Thank you.
Is it proper for her to be dressed as Aisha?
Is it proper for
Her to be dressed as
one of the titles that we call her is Mu'mineen, the mother of believers. Mu'mineen. This is one of the titles that we call her. But we find that in the hadith literature, or in the history, I should say, that, you know, sometimes she's actually called by her name. What I prefaced earlier, I prefaced the name by calling it Sayyidah. And Sayyidah, in a way, it's another honorable title to address someone. Sayyidah Aisha. Any other comments or questions? Well, is it time for futur yet? Is it time for iftar yet? Is it time for futur yet?
I don't know. My phone didn't go off.
Okay, then it's not. A few more minutes. Okay. Okay. So,
I just
please.
like one thing. Here. One thing.
I think the mosque phone is ringing. Someone needs to pick it up. I don't know. Someone. Sure, go ahead. Okay.
I know it's not like preaching to the choir and everything, but I still think it's an important point to like remind us constantly of. I think undoubtedly, like everybody's saying, like leading by example is like one of the best forms of da'wah, you know, doing it and everything like that. But obviously, you know, like kind of like thinking of like the two sides to
like the
coin,
practical.
You know what I'm saying? Like the part of like the knowledge part, I think is like educating oneself. Like when I was saying the point of like educating a person on like the detail, for instance, of the salah, but like of anything, about any of the rituals and things like that. It was more so for like that knowledge more than anything benefits like the individual themselves in terms of the level of like yaqeen that they have, like the level of maturity that they have with regard, because like leading by example works, especially for a child, right? They'll follow you without question up until a certain point. They hit a wall, right? And normally that wall comes from like society, right? Because they get out into the world and then people are asking all these questions and they don't have any answers to these questions. So like the example for, and even for, let's say, a new shahada, right? A person interested in Islam, they'll follow your example up until a certain point. They hit until they hit a wall, until someone questions them. Hey, listen, why is it that you do that? And then they have to come back and reflect and say, you know what? I don't actually know why I do this. Why is it like that? Why can't it be like this? And it's like, oh man, I don't know. Why do you have to do this? Why can't you do that? Why can't you do this? It's like, wait a minute, I don't know. Where in your Quran does it say that? Oh man, I don't know. And it's like, then people start to question their own self, their own self. Now it's like, you know, well, is this obligatory? Is it actually in the Quran, or is this forbidden? Is that actually in the Quran? Is there actually hadith for? Is there any proof for any of this? And then they start doubting themselves. That's why obviously the whole entire Quran was founded upon, you know, read, you know, like you know, iqra, right?
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that we sometimes miss, is that, you know, the knowledge is not always for the sake of like educating other people, but
ourselves,
just ourselves. Like, you know, so somebody come and they ask. I was just telling some students today, you know what I'm saying, like, you know, we was telling about tajweed. We're trying to tell them tajweed is important, tajweed is important, tajweed is important. And they say, okay, tajweed is important. Until somebody comes and say, well, what's the point of it? And you're like, I don't know, I just told it was important. You know, but then you add to that and you show them, you know what I'm saying, give them practical examples of reasons and things like that to strengthen their own conviction in that, so that they can give that off to someone else and stand on it.
Yes. Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to say is, I have some random point that I want to connect to this. It's over here. It's that, you know, like we were saying earlier, you know, for instance, I'll first off like to say that I believe like the head of whoever, like the leader, or I'll just speak with this form of society, the basis of society's family. The father, you know, has to teach, you know, the wife and the children, and then so, you know, when the father's going with the wife, he teaches the children. And I would like to say this, basically, I would like to put that out there first. But, you know, this day and age, I was a part of it, and I know a lot of people were part of that wall, you know, and we grew up, you know, like the conversation we had, I grew up, you know, like, what is this? So now, I have the need to erase some of these shackles and these skies and all this stuff that happened. So now, like, you know, I understand, like you said, the importance. And the thing is, you know, I feel like the lack of this is basically like, you know, we have this Asian or this thing out here trying to make sure that they disregard the knowledge, because right now, you know, I'm teaching my wife and my children about the deen the best way that I can. And, you know, it's hard because you try, you know, when you like I said, another thing I want to point out, the beautiful thing is when you actually go for the nature of, like, you know, like before I had my wife, you know, a lot of people who know me, you know, that I was like really arrogant and all that stuff. My wife came in, and when, you know, when we followed that nature of actually doing what we're supposed to do, I grew. I was like, I have a family, I have all this, I need to learn Quran, I need to do all this stuff. And it made me do it. Like, if forced me, I didn't have no option. I was like, man. So the thing is, I know I'm right. The thing is, it's hard. You know, I'm young. I'm gonna go ahead and say, I have to learn Arabic so I can, you know, learn the proper meaning of these words, and then teach my children so they don't hit this wall.
Right.
They can answer as many questions as they can. And it's based off, like I said, it's based off the leader. It's based off, like I said, I need to go learn as much as I can. I have to learn from Shamsuddin and all the other scholars, and then I have to learn this thing and come to my house and teach my wife, and then my wife has to teach the children, and then later on, Terrell, he's going to be a father. And at this point in time, we have to, you know, like I said, it's all it's like the tree, like I said, it trickles down. We have to get, you know, every telephone.
Right.
We have to make sure we put this message down. Shamsuddin has to teach me, I have to teach Tara, and Tara has to teach the children. So one day, Terrell doesn't hit the wall. And he has to have to go through this, and then he can go to his children. And, you know, like I said, guide them. It's a basically stronger generation of you know, this. And it's all based off of society. And it's, like I said, like again, it all connects. Because, like I said, it's hard when you don't have that knowledge to hit that wall. And, you know, if you're not ready for it, or, you know, Allah didn't bless you with that ability or that stability to take big hits.
It's that wall that causes people to go astray. They don't know how to get around it. And this is that wall of ignorance. That's why a lot of Christians come to Islam. They start asking about the Trinity. And what do they get? They get, it's a secret of the church. Or, you know, or some vague explanation or no explanation. So what happens? They start looking for something else. I can't do it. You ain't got no answers for me. I got to go somewhere else. And you ask the vast majority of Christian converts to Islam, it was like I couldn't get with that Trinity, and nobody could answer that question for me. So that's how I answer. It's time to break.
Yes. Oh, yes. One more.
The whole time, we have not heard what y'all said. I don't know. Y'all must not know, but none of the sisters actually didn't hear anything that y'all said.
Let's do it up there.
But only when you turn this way can I hear what you said. I heard somebody on the telephone, and
Well, I mean, y'all
it's your wife. I mean, I heard some things. And y'all got y'all back turned to us, and then, you know what I'm saying?
How about we make a dua, break the fast, and then we go downstairs and pray. And then we'll finish discussing at the dinner. So let's make a dua. اللهم صمت لك وتوكلت على رزقك أفطرت برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. آمين.